Yo, what's going on, guys? And today I wanted to talk about the Andrew Wiggins line. And this was a post on Reddit, NBA discussions I came across. I'll put the original post down below in the description. And it talked about Andrew Wiggins being the worst possible player to not be considered a bust, which I think I agree with this argument, and I wanted to discuss it with you guys. Is that Andrew Wiggins isn't a bust, but he is the least acceptable or least worst possible player you'd want with the first overall pick. So let's talk about it. Let's go back and talk about the last 20 picks. And this is a great video, so I want to hear your thoughts down below. Who's the biggest not bust but close to a bust player you ever seen or think of? All right, guys, let's get into it. Like, comment, and subscribe before we start. And yes, people often debate if a first overall pick is a bust or not. And there are no set measurements to analyze players with besides our opinions. But what if there was a clear way to determine this? As a Timberwolves fan, I believe Andrew Wiggins is the worst player possible that is still acceptable at the first overall spot that isn't a bust. In layman terms, Andrew Wiggins is the Eric Fisher of number one overall picks. Let me explain that metaphor. As Eric Fisher was the number one overall pick in the 2013 NFL draft by the Kansas City Chiefs, becoming the first Mid-American Conference player to be drafted number one overall. He was selected out of Central Michigan, where he dominated the Mid-American Conference from 2009 to 2012, being recognized first-team All-American by Pro Football Weekly, a second-team selection by Sports Illustrated, and received third-team honors from the Associated Press. He was also first-team All-American in the MAC selection, and he was part of two bowl wins with Central Michigan in 2010 and 2012. And you're probably thinking, why on earth is this guy talking about a left tackle in the NFL during an NBA video? Well, it's because Eric Fisher kind of sucked in his first few years in the NFL and was considered a bust. According to Pro Football Focus, during Eric Fisher's rookie year, his run blocking grade ranked 55th out of 76 NFL tackles who played at least 25% of their team snaps. His overall grade as a tackle ranked 70th out of 76 NFL tackles during his rookie year. And in his sophomore season, his overall grade ranked 76 out of 84 qualifying tackles. At this point, many people questioned the Eric Fisher selection at number one by the Kansas City Chiefs, especially that later first round picks and later picks in the entire draft were surpassing him. Then Eric Fisher turned it around. He won a Super Bowl. He earned 2 trips to the Pro Bowl, which is the NFL's crappy version of an all-star game. And in 8 seasons, he did all of that in Kansas City. And now he's in Indianapolis. I said that weird. Indianapolis. And he's earned loads of money. So I think Eric Fisher, like Andrew Wiggins, is the worst possible number one overall pick that isn't a bust. So let's get right into this video. The Andrew Wiggins line. That is, if you're lower than the Andrew Wiggins line, you're a bust. But if you're higher than it, you're not. I wanted to make sure players like Dwight Howard and Derrick Rose, who played a lot after their prime, said that weird, saw their careers reflected fairly. So I included the WSP4, which is the average of all players' 4 best seasons in terms of win share, which means win share per 4 seasons, WSP4. Okay, and I've excluded players who played less than 4 years because it's not enough time to decide if they're busts or not yet, meaning Zion Williamson, DeAndre Ayton, and our man, Anthony Edwards. I did include them just to show how they progressed so far in the career. So these are the equations used by the original posters that I verified, which took me about 2 hours. The win share per 4 is the average of a player's 4 best seasons in terms of win share. Win presence is the games played divided by the total games available times the total win shares divided by the games played times 100. And then the win PA-4 is the average of win shares per 4 and the win presence. A lot of stuff, a lot of numbers, real boring stuff. So right here we have the best overall picks since 2000 are LeBron James with 17.71, Anthony Davis with 12.28, Dwight Howard with 11.87, Karl Anthony Towns with 11.69, Yao Ming with 9.64, Blake Griffin with 9.32, Kyrie Irving and Ben Simmons rounding out the bottom. So those right there are the 8 best first overall picks in the last 20 years, okay? By win share and win presence, okay? In terms of wins they brought to their team, right there are the most, positive players for a franchise. And one that surprised me is Karl-Anthony Towns, because the Timberwolves haven't won that much, but they've won a lot more since Karl-Anthony Towns came. They were real bad before that. And then in the middle is Kenyon Martin, Andrew Bogut, Derrick Rose, and John Wall. And Derrick Rose, Andrew Bogut, and Kenyon Martin, we'll talk about them later and why they're considered average, or like between average and above, Wiggins. And John Wall, he just played on a lot of bad Wizards team, and then he missed basically 2.5 years with injury. And then players who we can say are busts, okay, because Andrew Wiggins at 3.5 is Kwame Brown, Andre Barjani, who, again, I don't believe is a bust, but we'll talk about that. Markelle Fultz, who I still think the jury is out, who he technically missed some time, Greg Oden, and Andrew Bennett. I don't know why it says Andrew Bennett, but it should be Anthony Bennett, and that is actually so sad. Anthony Bennett. All right? So, on my notes, it said Andrew Bennett instead of Anthony Bennett. That's funny. So Anthony Bennett's the worst. Greg Oden, again, another guy we can't consider because of injury. But Markelle Fultz and Kwame Brown, technically the biggest bust in the last 20 years, and Andre Barjani. So Greg Oden simply didn't play enough to qualify to make him a bust, even though he would have been considered one if we use this data. But in my opinion, he would have been a perennial all-star if he was healthy. Everyone who's between average and the Wiggins line had major injuries that derailed their careers. John Wall injured his heel and Achilles and missed the 2 entire seasons. We all know what happened to Derrick Rose. Andrew Bogut had stress fractures and his arm was destroyed after being flipped upside down mid-air during a dunk. Kenyon Martin had microfracture surgery, which was a death sentence for his athleticism and basically his career. And I believe Andre Barjani isn't a bust. And if he was drafted in today's NBA, he still would have been a top 10 pick, and arguably he could be a top 3 pick. I personally think he came in ahead of his time. He came in the wrong time. He had multiple double-digit scoring seasons with well over 12 points a game. Like, he had like 4 or 5 years where he was like scoring at least 17 points a game. Okay, and he had like 3 years where he was like a 19-point, 20-point scorer a year, and he averaged 1 year almost 2 blocks a game. He was a guy who averaged at least a block a game. So though Andrew Wiggins isn't a bust, I think he's the least acceptable first overall pick. So I want to hear your guys' thoughts about that video. But that's basically it for me, guys. Is Andrew Wiggins the least acceptable version of a first overall pick? Is he the Eric Fisher of first overall picks? So let me hear your thoughts down below, guys. That's it for me. Peace. Oh.